What happens when a rich bully, who uses money and fists to make the rules, corners a military legend? Garrick Mercer, a 52-year-old truck driver, only wants to finish his night shift to make breakfast for his daughter, Talia. But at 11:30 p.m. on a rainy night at Mama Pearl's kitchen, MMA champ Hunter Prescott throws a dirty bag. He spills tea on Talia's photo and insults Garrick's roots. This insult hurts the father's pride, forcing the former SEAL Team 3 commander to handle the situation. Now, he must face dangerous thugs from Jacksonville, violent revenge, and clever legal traps. Can an infrared dashcam and the honor of a police captain help him win against the bad guys? Right after those proud words hit the air, the rain outside grew heavier, like the sky itself wanted to listen. 3 years before, that night, Garrick Mercer had made a promise to himself. No more war, no more blood, just quiet mornings with his daughter. He drove a Kenworth T680 for Blue Horizon Freight, 14 hours a day, 5 days a week. His hands, once steady on a rifle, now rested calm on a steering wheel. Every night at exactly 8:04 p.m., he called Talia. She was staying with old Mrs. Gable next door while he worked. Her voice always smelled like home to him, even through a phone. "Daddy, we made cookies today," she said that night, giggling. Garrick smiled, watching wipers slap against the windshield. "Save me one, baby girl," he said. His voice was soft, low, like gravel wrapped in velvet. He kept a small red bracelet on his wrist. Talia had braided it herself, using yarn from her mother's old sewing box. The threads were frayed now, worn thin from 3 years of constant wear. Talia had her mother's laugh, bright and sudden, like a bell ringing in an empty room. Garrick heard it every night on the phone, and it always steadied him. He remembered holding her the first night, tiny and warm against his chest. He had promised her, silently, that she would never see the war inside him. His wife had died giving birth to Talia. Some nights, the grief still crawled up his throat like smoke. He pushed it down the way he pushed down everything else. The cab of his truck always smelled like burnt coffee and diesel fumes. Rain tapped the roof in a soft, steady rhythm that night. Under it, he could hear the engine humming low, almost like a lullaby. Garrick liked that sound. It reminded him nothing bad was happening right now. After years overseas, silence used to feel dangerous. Out here, silence just meant peace. He kept a small metal tin under his bed at home. Inside sat 2 silver medals, a folded flag, and a photo of men who never made it home. He rarely opened that box anymore. Once, he had led 7 men through a burning compound in the Horn of Africa. He remembered the smoke, thick and choking, and the sound of gunfire cracking through darkness. He had carried a wounded teammate 3 miles that night, refusing to leave anyone behind. That teammate now had grandchildren of his own, somewhere far from Georgia. Garrick never talked about those nights. Some memories belonged locked away, not shared over pie and coffee. Nobody at Mama Pearl's kitchen knew Garrick used to be a Master Chief in the Navy SEALs. Nobody knew about the rescue missions in the Horn of Africa. Nobody knew about the medals locked in a rusted tin box under his bed. To them, he was just a tired driver in a faded work jacket, eating pie alone at a corner booth. That was exactly how he wanted it. The diner buzzed quietly that night. Fry oil hissed behind the counter. A country song crackled from an old jukebox in the corner. Rain drummed steady against the windows outside. Garrick sat in his usual corner booth, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His work jacket smelled of road dust and cold coffee. He liked this booth. It faced the door, an old habit that never fully left him. At 11:30 p.m., the diner door swung open hard. Rain blew in sideways. 3 men walked in, loud, reeking of whiskey and cheap cologne. Hunter Prescott led the group, 29 years old, undefeated in 18 professional fights. His welterweight title belt sat framed in his gym back in Jacksonville. Tonight, he wore an $1,100 tracksuit and gold chains that clicked with every step. Hunter had grown up believing money solved everything. His father had built a small fortune in real estate, and Hunter learned early that rules bent easily for people with cash. Fans lined up outside his gym every weekend, chanting his name like he was untouchable. He had started believing it himself. His boots clicked hard against the tile floor, loud and deliberate. He wanted every head in that diner to turn and look. Behind him walked Troy and Gavin, his training partners, both grinning like hyenas smelling blood. Hunter tossed his gym bag onto the booth divider without looking. It knocked straight into Garrick's glass of sweet tea. The tea spilled across the table. It soaked into an old photo of Talia, the one Garrick kept propped against his coffee cup every single night. Garrick froze. His jaw tightened first, a small twitch under his beard. Then his knuckles turned pale as he gripped the edge of the table. For a moment, old instincts flickered behind his calm eyes. He breathed slowly, counting to 3, the way he had trained himself for years. His heart pounded once hard, then steadied again. He was a father first tonight, not a soldier. He picked up the photo gently, dabbing it with a napkin. Water had already blurred his daughter's smiling face. "Excuse me," Garrick said, his voice calm but firm. "Could you say sorry for that?" Hunter turned slowly, looking Garrick up and down like he was something stuck on his shoe. "Sorry for what, old man?" Hunter smirked, stepping closer, invading Garrick's space. "Looks like a cheap picture anyway." The diner grew quiet. Even the old jukebox seemed to lower its country song. "That's my daughter," Garrick said, keeping his tone level. Hunter laughed, loud and sharp, glancing at Troy and Gavin for approval. A tired old truck driver crying over a wet photo? That's pathetic. He leaned down, sniffing the air near Garrick's jacket. "You smell like diesel and defeat, man. Maybe learn your place." Troy laughed loudly, slapping the table with his palm. Gavin filmed the whole thing on his phone, grinning wide for the camera. An old woman 2 booths away lowered her fork, watching quietly. Nobody said a word to stop Hunter. Nobody ever did. The insult landed heavier than the spilled tea. It wasn't just about the picture anymore. It was about everything Hunter assumed just by looking at him. Garrick's chest tightened. His pulse thudded once hard behind his ears. But he thought of Talia's laugh on the phone just minutes earlier. A fight tonight could cost him his license. It could cost him everything he had rebuilt since the war. So he swallowed the fire rising in his throat. He stood, folded 3 crumpled bills onto the table, exactly $12. $45 for his meal. He slipped the damp photo into his shirt pocket, close to his heart, and walked toward the door. Hunter and his friends followed him out into the storm, laughing, filming everything on their phones for likes. Gavin threw an empty beer can. It bounced off Garrick's windshield with a hollow crack. Garrick climbed into his truck without a word. He looked once in his rearview mirror, watching 3 blurry shapes fade into the rain. He had a delivery to finish. Airplane engine parts, bound for a hangar outside Savannah. If he left now, he could still make it home in time for pancakes. He told himself the insult didn't matter. He told himself walking away was the stronger choice. But deep inside, something old and dangerous had been quietly woken up. The highway stretched dark and empty ahead of him. Rain streaked sideways across his headlights. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, low and heavy. Garrick gripped the wheel with both hands, knuckles pale under the dashboard glow. His jaw still ached from clenching it so hard back at the diner. He turned on the radio, hoping music might quiet his racing thoughts. Static crackled through the speakers instead. 20 minutes into the drive, his phone buzzed on the dashboard. It was Marcus, an old teammate from SEAL Team 3, now working logistics dispatch. "You sound different tonight," Marcus said, static crackling on the line. "What happened?" Garrick told him, keeping his voice flat, almost bored, the way soldiers learn to hide pain. Marcus went quiet for a moment. Then he repeated words their old commander used to say. "The strongest weapon a warrior carries isn't his fists. It's knowing exactly when to hold back." "I know," Garrick muttered, watching the wipers fight the rain. "That kid, Hunter Prescott," Marcus added, his tone sharpening. "Word is his gym gets funded by some ugly people in Jacksonville. Real ugly. Be careful out there tonight." I'm not looking for trouble, Garrick said quietly. I just want to finish this route. I know you don't, Marcus replied. But trouble sometimes finds good men anyway. Garrick thanked him and hung up, gripping the wheel a little tighter. Something about Marcus's warning sat wrong in his stomach. He had no idea, yet how right that warning would turn out to be. By 2:15 a.m., Garrick reached the Savannah Air Cargo Yard. Rain hammered the metal containers stacked around him like silver dominoes. Tall security lights buzzed overhead, casting long yellow shadows across wet concrete. The whole yard smelled like rust, oil, and rain-soaked steel. Somewhere nearby, a loose chain clinked softly against the container wall. The sound echoed strangely in the empty dark. Garrick rolled his window down slightly, letting cool, wet air fill the cab. Something about the silence felt heavier than usual tonight. He couldn't quite name the feeling, but old instincts rarely lied to him. He slowed his truck, preparing to back into Dock 9, when a black Shelby F-150 roared out from behind a container. It skidded sideways, blocking the only exit from the yard. Hunter stepped out first, still buzzing with whiskey and wounded pride. Troy and Gavin followed, each one gripping a weapon. A steel pipe. A woodenba. Thought you could just walk away, old man. Hunter shouted through the rain. Nobody disrespects me and drives off happy. Garrick's stomach dropped, but his mind snapped into a different gear entirely. This wasn't a diner argument anymore. This was an ambush. He calculated distances instantly, the way old training never truly disappears. 3 men, 2 weapons. 1 exit currently blocked. You don't want to do this, Garrick said calmly, stepping down from his cab. Rain soaked through his jacket instantly. Get on your knees, Hunter barked, pointing at the wet asphalt. Apologize like you mean it. Troy, get the camera ready. Garrick raised both hands slightly, still hoping for a peaceful way out. Last chance. Walk back to your truck. Gavin lost patience first. He swung the steel pipe hard, aiming straight for Garrick's skull. What happened next took less than 15 seconds. Garrick pivoted sideways, letting the pipe whistle past his ear. His hand shot out, twisting Gavin's shoulder until it popped loudly out of its socket. Gavin dropped, screaming, clutching his ruined arm. Troy lunged next, swinging the bat wildly. Garrick ducked low, swept his leg, and sent Troy crashing onto one knee with a sickening crack. Hunter finally charged, throwing a trained combination of punches, fast and brutal in the cage. Out here, in the rain, none of it landed. Garrick blocked each strike with terrifying calm, like swatting away raindrops. He caught Hunter's arm, twisted, and pressed his face down into a cold puddle. Rainwater filled Hunter's mouth and nose instantly. He gagged, kicking uselessly against the wet ground. His $300 sneakers scraped uselessly against the concrete. All his training, all his belts, meant nothing right now. The undefeated champion tasted wet asphalt and defeat at the exact same moment. Silence fell over the yard, except for rain tapping steadily on metal roofs. Somewhere nearby, a security siren began wailing, triggered automatically by the commotion. Intéressant. His shoulder burned like fire. His whole understanding of power had just been rewritten in 15 seconds. He had no idea who Garrick truly was. Not yet. 2 Savannah police cruisers screeched into the yard minutes later, blue and red lights slicing through the rain. Hunter, cradling his dislocated arm, screamed the first accusation he could think of. He attacked us. That maniac tried to kill us. 2 young officers drew their weapons instantly, shouting for Garrick to get down. Garrick obeyed without resistance, lowering himself slowly onto the wet ground, hands raised high above his head. He understood the picture perfectly. A wealthy young champion, bleeding and shouting, against a black driver in a soaked work jacket. He had seen this kind of injustice before, back when he was young. Some things about the world moved slower than he wished. Still, he stayed calm, breathing steady, refusing to let fear or anger control his face. Rain kept falling steady around them all, soaking through every jacket in the yard. Radios crackled from both cruisers, mixing with distant rolling thunder. One young officer's hand trembled slightly on his weapon. Garrick noticed it, filed it away, and stayed perfectly still. A third patrol car rolled in, slower than the others. Its headlights swept across the yard like a spotlight. The driver's door opened. A tall officer stepped out, adjusting his soaked cap. He walked closer, then suddenly stopped, staring hard at Garrick's face under the harsh yard lights. Captain Raymond Fletcher removed his cap completely. Rain dripped down his stunned expression. He snapped instantly into a formal military salute, standing rigid despite the pouring storm. "Commander Mercer," Fletcher said, his voice cracking with emotion. "My little brother is alive because of you. Djibouti, 11 years ago. That swamp extraction." The two young officers lowered their weapons slowly, confusion spreading across their faces. Hunter's mouth fell open. "Wait, what? Commander? This guy drives a truck." Fletcher ignored him completely, still holding his salute. "It's an honor to see you again, sir." Garrick lowered his hands slowly, nodding once, quiet gratitude in his tired eyes. For a moment, nobody in that yard moved. Even the rain seemed to soften, falling lighter across the scene. The two young officers exchanged a stunned glance, weapons now pointed toward the ground. Fletcher turned sharply toward Hunter, all warmth gone from his face now. "You three are under arrest for armed assault and unlawful pursuit. You can't do this." Hunter shrieked, spit flying from his lips. "Do you know who I am? I'll destroy your career, Captain. I'll destroy this whole department." Fletcher didn't blink. "Cuff them," he told his officers, voice steady as stone. By sunrise, news of the incident had already reached Jacksonville. Hunter's lawyers moved fast, desperate to control the story before it spread further. They paid local reporters to paint Garrick as unstable, violent, a danger with a hidden temper. They demanded his commercial license be revoked immediately. But Hunter's team had missed one crucial detail entirely. Garrick's Kenworth T680 carried a military-grade infrared dashcam, installed years earlier out of old habit. It recorded every second of that yard in perfect, undeniable clarity. Every threat, every slur Hunter shouted, every swing of that steel pipe. Garrick didn't rush to a television camera or shout his side of the story. Instead, he quietly handed the memory card to a respected investigative journalist named Renata Cole. "Let the footage speak," Garrick told her simply. "I don't need to." Renata watched the recording twice, her hands trembling slightly by the second viewing. What she saw was clear evidence of a planned ambush, not a crazed attack. She began digging deeper into Hunter's gym, Apex Combat Academy, and its mysterious sponsors. Renata spent 3 straight nights buried in old financial filings. Her small office smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. Papers covered every inch of her desk. She cross-checked sponsorship names against old court records for Jacksonville. Slowly, a pattern started forming beneath the surface. What she uncovered went far beyond one angry young fighter. The gym's funding traced back through shell companies to a man named Victor Kessler, a name whispered carefully around Jacksonville's underworld. Federal agents had watched Victor for years, unable to prove anything solid. Renata found his name buried inside 3 different holding companies, each one hiding behind the last. Her hands shook slightly as she connected the final piece. She realized this story was far bigger than one arrogant fighter and a wet photograph. Hunter's public boasts, posted constantly online, had unknowingly documented years of laundered payments disguised as sponsorship deals. His own bragging, meant to inflate his ego, had built the very case against him. When Victor realized the dashcam footage threatened everything, panic replaced his usual cold patience. He couldn't buy off a Navy legend. He couldn't intimidate a decorated captain either. So he chose the cruelest option left available to him. He sent 2 men to Mrs. Gable's quiet house, where Talia had been sleeping soundly through the storm. Their plan was simple and monstrous. Grab the girl, force Garrick to hand over the dashcam footage. force him to sign a false confession. Mrs. Gable's little house sat quiet under a canopy of old oak trees. Her porch light flickered weakly, half burnt out for weeks now. Talia's bicycle leaned against the front steps, wet with evening dew. Inside, Talia slept soundly, hugging a worn stuffed rabbit close to her chest. She had no idea two men were watching her window from the dark. At 9:47 p.m. the next night, Garrick's phone rang with an unknown number. Victor's voice came through, smooth and terrifyingly patient. "Hand over the card, Commander. Sign what we send you, or your little girl learns what real fear feels like." Garrick's hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles ached. His breathing slowed, deliberate and controlled. Something inside Garrick went cold, sharp, and perfectly focused. This wasn't rage anymore. Rage was loud and messy. This was something colder, quieter, and far more dangerous. He pictured Talia's small face, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the threat closing in. That image alone steadied his hands. He didn't call Jacksonville police, suspecting Victor's money had already bought silence inside that department. Instead, he called Marcus immediately. "They're going after Talia," Garrick said, his voice suddenly sharp as a blade. Marcus didn't ask questions. "Give me 20 minutes. I'm bringing gear." He arrived faster than promised, headlights off, tires crunching softly on gravel. He carried a duffel bag full of old equipment, some of it years out of use. Garrick met him at the edge of the yard, rain still falling in a steady curtain. Neither man spoke much. They didn't need to. They moved through the shadows like two ghosts remembering old choreography. A tripwire here, low across the doorway. A quiet signal there, just a raised hand. Within 11 minutes, the whole property had become a silent trap, invisible to anyone walking in blind. Within the hour, two men in dark clothing crept toward Mrs. Gable's back door, cutting the porch light with practiced ease. They had no idea a former SEAL commander and his old teammate were already waiting inside the shadows. The moment the first intruder stepped through the doorway, a tripwire silently tightened around his ankle. He crashed forward, and Marcus was on him instantly, pressing a knee firmly into his back. The second man barely had time to gasp before Garrick's arm locked around his throat from behind. Both men were bound, gagged, and disarmed in under 90 seconds, without a single shout waking the house. Talia slept peacefully upstairs the entire time, completely unaware of the danger that had just crawled past her window. Mrs. Gable never woke either, her old hearing aid resting quietly on a nightstand. At the exact same hour, Captain Fletcher led a joint operation with federal agents into Apex Combat Academy. They seized computers, hard drives, and boxes of hidden financial records. Agents moved through the gym in tactical vests, flashlights cutting through the dark training floor. Heavy bags swayed gently from the sudden rush of movement. One agent found a locked safe behind a framed photo of Hunter's championship belt. Inside sat stacks of cash, bound tightly in rubber bands. Another agent pulled ledgers from a filing cabinet, each page filled with fake invoices and inflated numbers. The paper trail told a story far uglier than any highlight reel. Outside, rain finally slowed to a light drizzle over the empty parking lot. The evidence connected every laundered dollar directly back to Victor and, by extension, to Hunter's inflated sponsorship deals. By dawn, Victor's entire criminal network had collapsed like a house built on wet sand. News spread fast across Georgia and Florida. A wealthy champion boxer, exposed as a violent bully protected by dirty money. A humble truck driver, revealed as a decorated war hero who saved lives long before saving his own daughter. People who once ignored Garrick at gas stations now approached him with quiet respect, some even with tears in their eyes. A young mother stopped him once outside a grocery store, thanking him for showing her son what real courage looked like. Garrick simply nodded, uncomfortable with the praise. Reporters called his phone constantly for weeks, hoping for interviews and dramatic quotes. He turned down almost every single one, preferring silence to spotlight. One reporter offered him a large sum for an exclusive interview about the ambush. Garrick politely declined, saying the footage already told the truth. He never sought that attention. He simply wanted his daughter safe and his mornings peaceful again. Hunter Prescott stood trial 3 months later, facing charges of armed assault, extortion, and conspiracy. The evidence against him, recorded in crisp infrared detail, left no real room for doubt. The courtroom stayed silent as the dashcam footage played on a large screen. Jurors watched Hunter's own voice, threatening and cruel, echo through the speakers. Hunter sat stiff in his expensive suit, staring at the table. For the first time in years, nobody in that room admired him. Garrick sat quietly in the back row, hands folded in his lap. He felt no joy watching Hunter squirm, only a tired kind of relief. Talia waited outside with Mrs. Gable, coloring pictures on a small notepad. She had no idea her father's quiet courage had brought this whole case together. His lawyer argued quietly for leniency, but the evidence spoke louder than any argument could. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions at Hunter as guards led him toward a waiting van. He said nothing, staring straight ahead at nothing at all. His gym sign came down within a week, replaced by an empty storefront window. His sponsors quietly vanished, erasing his name from every website they could find. The undefeated champion had finally lost the only fight that truly mattered. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison. His gym chain shut down completely, its assets frozen by federal investigators. The undefeated champion, once untouchable in the ring, now wore an orange jumpsuit instead of a title belt. Garrick received a formal apology from the freight company and a generous settlement from Hunter's former sponsors, totaling $450,000. He didn't buy anything flashy. He didn't chase fame or interviews. Instead, he purchased a brand new Peterbilt truck, painted deep ocean blue, with careful gold letters along the door. Talia's dream, it read, glowing warmly under the morning sun. He also opened a long-term savings account for Talia's college education, tucking away every extra dollar he could spare. Some evenings, Captain Fletcher stopped by their favorite diner, 2 coffees in hand, one black, one with extra cream. He always saluted Garrick first, out of habit and lasting respect, before sliding into the booth beside him. The diner had cleaned itself up since that stormy night. New paint on the walls, a fresh neon sign buzzing in the window. Mama Pearl herself now waved warmly every time Garrick walked in. Talia, now allowed to visit her father's new route occasionally, loved climbing into the tall blue cab. "Daddy, can we drive all night one day?" she asked one sunny morning, syrup dripping from her fork. Garrick smiled, brushing a curl from her forehead gently. "One day, baby girl, when you're a little older. Will you tell me a story about the ocean?" she asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "Mrs. Gable said you used to swim far away." Garrick chuckled softly, glancing toward Fletcher across the table. "Maybe someday, Talia. Some stories take time to tell, right?" She nodded, satisfied for now, and returned happily to her pancakes. He glanced toward his old red bracelet, still tied carefully around his wrist, threads worn but unbroken. He thought about the war he once fought overseas and the quieter one he fought that rainy night. Real strength, he realized, was never about proving power to strangers in a parking lot. It was about staying gentle enough to still make pancakes the next morning. He thought of Gavin and Troy sometimes, wondering if prison had taught them anything real. He hoped it had, though he never wasted much time wondering. Marcus still called every Sunday, just to check in and swap old jokes. Fletcher still saluted him, half joking, every single time they met. Mrs. Gable baked cookies every week now, insisting Talia needed extra sweetness after everything that had happened. Nobody argued with her about it. Hunter Prescott had spent his life mistaking cruelty for power and money for respect. Garrick Mercer never once raised his voice to prove himself. His silence, his patience, and his love for one little girl had done all the talking that mattered. Outside Mama Pearl's kitchen, the storm from that November night had long since passed. The neon signs still buzzed weakly against the dark, but the road ahead, for Garrick and Talia, finally ran calm, clear, and entirely their own.